Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Usually when we anticipate a massive shift in our lives, we expect some sort of undeniable physical proof. Like we look for a clear signal.
Right? Something tangible you can actually hold on to.
Yeah, you wait for that thick college acceptance envelope to arrive in the mail. Or, you sign a physical contract for a new job.
Or you get a draft card handed to you by the government.
Yes, precisely. It is
Yeah.
tangible, it is clear. So today on our show, we are taking a deep dive into two rigorous theological commentaries on Isaiah chapter 6.
And these commentaries scrutinize the biblical requirements for engaging in local and global ministry.
They really do. Our mission today is to shatter some modern, superficial concepts of religious calling. We want to investigate the biblical reality of standing before a holy God.
Which is an incredibly heavy topic, honestly.
It is. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right from the start. If you are listening to this on your commute to a corporate accounting job or, while folding laundry, you might be thinking that you are not a prophet.
Right, you are not a missionary, so why does a terrifying throne room scene apply to you?
Yeah, how does this fit into your daily routine? Well, whether you are considering a vocation in ministry or you simply want to understand the rigorous theology behind biblical obedience, this discussion will clarify your actual responsibilities right now, today.
We are looking at how a person discerns a call by examining this specific explosive moment in the biblical text.
So to start us off, the craving for that tangible proof we mentioned earlier, that is incredibly common, especially in the spiritual realm, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We want something we can hold or at least something we can definitively feel in our bones.
Right.
But when you step into the theology of a divine calling, relying on that expectation often leads people completely astray. We are looking at a landscape of vocational discernment that is full of massive misunderstandings.
What kind of misunderstandings are we talking about here?
Well, the modern evangelical landscape frequently treats a calling like an arbitrary emotional shiver.
Like a feeling you get when the music swells.
Yes, precisely. It is framed as a mystical voice in the dark, or worse, a secular pursuit of personal passion baptized with religious language.
Oh, wow. That is a sharp way to put it.
The contemporary environment relies heavily on pragmatism and, frankly, seeker-sensitive novelties.
And by seeker-sensitive novelties, you are referring to designing church services like rock concerts, right?
Yeah, rock concerts or TED Talks, things designed to attract consumers. They strip away the holy dread of God to make him more palatable.
So in that kind of environment, people just wait around for a customized, personalized sign from the heavens before they commit to obedience.
That is the tragic result, yeah.
Let us unpack that concept a bit more. It feels like the modern pursuit of a calling is treated like waiting for a magical acceptance letter to drop down the chimney.
A letter from an owl, basically.
Yeah, like you are just sitting by the fireplace waiting for a specialized owl to deliver the parchment that says you are officially selected to go do something spectacular.
And you assume that until that letter arrives, you are totally off the hook.
Right. You do not have to do anything difficult or sacrificial because, well, you have not received your specific mystical sign.
That analogy is a devastatingly accurate image of the passivity involved. The commentaries we are looking at today clarify that waiting for new extra-biblical revelations is a serious error.
Because the scriptures are already sufficient.
Yes, the scriptures provide total sufficiency for guiding our actions. True calling requires disciplined pursuit through ordinary means of grace.
And when theologians talk about the ordinary means of grace, they are referring to the unglamorous daily diet of the Christian life, right?
Yeah, we're talking about rigorous Bible reading, intense prevailing prayer, and regular participation in corporate worship and the sacraments.
So it is not about waiting for mystical signs or a feeling of destiny.
Not at all. You do not wait for the chimney letter. You engage with what has already been spoken in the text.
So instead of the chimney letter, the biblical model is much more like joining the military.
That is a great way to look at it.
You do not wait for a mystical feeling in your bedroom. You sign up, you report directly for basic training, and you start doing the grueling, unglamorous drills.
You learn how to make your bed, how to follow commands, and, how to march in step before you ever see a battlefield.
Exactly. Precisely. You have to learn the basics.
That basic training is mandatory. You cannot be sent across the globe if you have not learned how to follow orders at the base.
Which makes total sense.
And if we want to understand what this rigorous basic training looks like, we must look at the precise historical moment when the prophet Isaiah received his commission.
Because the text does not deliver theology in a vacuum.
Right. God reveals his nature in the grit and grind of human history.
Which brings us to the year 740 BC. The opening line of Isaiah chapter 6 sets the scene by stating, "In the year that King Uzziah died."
That is the anchor for the entire vision.
Okay, I have to ask about this. Why does the timing matter? Is that just a casual timestamp on an ancient document, or is there a specific reason we need to know the political climate of that exact year?
Oh, it is a massive geopolitical and theological marker. To grasp the weight of this, you have to understand who Uzziah was.
He was a pretty major figure, right?
Huge. He assumed the throne at the age of 16 and reigned over Judah for 52 years.
52 years.
Yes. For half a century, an entire generation knew absolutely no other monarch. Think about the psychological stability of that.
Wow, yeah, an entire lifetime for most people back then under one ruler.
And under his administration, Judah experienced unparalleled economic success, agricultural development, and military expansion.
He was highly effective.
Very. He fought the Philistines and broke down the walls of their cities. He built towers in Jerusalem and fortified them.
I read he even dug massive cisterns for his livestock.
He did. He had a highly trained, specialized standing army of over 300,000 men.
That is staggering for the ancient world.
It really is. They were equipped with the ancient equivalent of advanced artillery. By all earthly metrics, he was an absolute triumph.
So the entire nation felt completely secure under his shadow.
They absolutely did.
He sounds like a modern-day CEO or a wildly successful politician who builds an absolute empire. Like he fixes the economy, secures the borders, and creates an unprecedented era of peace.
Right, but then it all crashes down.
Because of his pride.
Yes. The text in 2 Chronicles provides the tragic conclusion to his life. It tells us that when Uzziah became strong in his military and economic achievements, he grew incredibly proud.
And that led to his destruction.
He decided the normal rules no longer applied to him. He illegally bypassed the priesthood and violently intruded into the temple to burn incense on the altar.
So he assumed his political success granted him religious authority.
Which is a fatal error. God judged him instantly. Leprosy broke out on his forehead right there in the sanctuary while he was holding the censer.
That is terrifying, just an immediate physical judgment.
He was thrust out, cut off from the house of the Lord, and died in isolation as a leper.
Man, the architect of their national security dies in divine disgrace. That has to send a shockwave of existential dread through the entire country.
It completely destabilized everything.
The throne they trusted is suddenly empty. All the stability they had known for 52 years is just gone in a flash of arrogance.
And that empty earthly throne coincides with a terrifying geopolitical crisis.
Right, because Assyria is making moves at this time.
Yes. While Judah was dealing with the fallout of Uzziah's disgrace, the Assyrian Empire was awakening under a ruthless, expansionist ruler named Tiglath-Pileser III.
And the Assyrians were notoriously brutal.
They were not just another army. They were masters of psychological warfare and absolute cruelty. They were known for flaying their enemies, impaling captives, and completely dismantling conquered societies.
So the dark clouds of a foreign invasion were gathering on the horizon.
The surrounding nations were terrified. It is precisely in this moment of severe political instability and the sudden collapse of human sovereignty that God moves.
The death of Uzziah shattered Judah's false security.
It tore it to pieces.
I have a challenging question here, actually. Does God actively remove our comfortable earthly securities specifically to expose our idolatry and reveal his absolute rule? Or is Uzziah's death just the natural consequence of human failure that God happens to use?
That is a great question. The commentators address this tension regarding providence. The text positions Uzziah's death not just as a tragedy, but as the necessary prerequisite for Isaiah's vision.
So God was actively clearing the stage, so to speak.
Yes, God actively stripped away the nation's functional savior so the prophet could see the eternal sovereign. We constantly put our trust in the princes of this world, whether they are politicians, charismatic leaders, or strong economic systems.
And when those functional saviors fail?
It creates a theological crisis that demands we look higher. When the earthly throne is violently emptied, the heavenly throne is gloriously revealed.
Wow. The shock of Uzziah's sudden death really sets the stage for a massive structural shift in the biblical text itself.
It does.
Right, because Isaiah chapter 6 is not the beginning of the book. I think a lot of people read this specific vision in isolation, but we have 5 whole chapters of dense material before this event takes place.
The literary placement of chapter 6 is a masterclass in divine rhetoric. Chapters 1 through 5 function as a cosmic courtroom drama.
And Hebrew scholars have a specific term for that, right?
They do. They refer to this specific genre as a rib, which translates to a formal lawsuit or a covenantal prosecution.
So God acts as the aggrieved party, the judge, and the jury.
And Isaiah acts as the prosecuting attorney representing the divine court.
That makes a lot of sense. In those first 5 chapters, Isaiah is hurling these blistering indictments at his own nation.
He is not holding back at all.
He delivers 6 distinct aggressive woes upon the corrupt politicians, the wealthy elite who exploit the poor, the drunkards, and the hypocrites of Judah.
He is essentially calling their outward religious rituals a total stench. He is telling them God hates their festivals because their hands are full of blood.
So Isaiah is operating from the extreme high moral ground here.
Absolutely. He is pointing the bony finger of divine judgment at a wicked society, thoroughly convinced of his own righteous standing as the messenger of God.
But the transition into chapter 6 is spiritually violent.
It is a total reversal.
The man who just pronounced judgment on the entire nation suddenly steps into the heavenly throne room, and his entire posture collapses immediately.
He does not look around and say, "Woe to them." He cries out, "Woe is me."
It is like a harsh, supremely confident prosecuting attorney who is aggressively cross-examining witnesses in a local trial, feeling totally vindicated in his legal brilliance.
Right.
And then he accidentally walks through the wrong door. He steps into a Supreme courtroom, looks up at the judge on the bench, and suddenly realizes he is the one actually on trial for treason.
Oh, that is good.
All his confidence, all his moral superiority just evaporates in a split second.
That analogy captures the whiplash of the text flawlessly. The biblical pattern is that the law absolutely precedes the gospel.
Meaning human depravity must be exposed before grace can be applied.
Precisely. No person is fit to pronounce the judgment of God upon the world until they have first felt the crushing weight of God's holiness upon their own sinful soul.
So the literary flow moves from national condemnation to personal devastation, and only then to divine commissioning.
You cannot skip the devastation phase.
This severe whiplash compels us to investigate what Isaiah actually saw in that room. Like, what could possibly cause such an extreme reaction from a guy who was just confidently rebuking an entire nation moments before?
To grasp the magnitude of the vision, we have to break down the specific Hebrew syntax of Isaiah 6.1. Every grammatical choice in this sentence carries massive theological weight.
Okay, let us dig into the grammar.
Isaiah says, "I saw the Lord," but he utilizes the title Adonai rather than the covenant name Yahweh.
Wait, let us clarify that distinction. Adonai means absolute master, right?
Yes.
Like an owner of an estate or a sovereign lord who holds total property rights.
That is right. Adonai is the plural of majesty, signifying the sovereign ruler and absolute owner of all things. The grammar demands total submission.
So by using Adonai, Isaiah is highlighting God's undeniable authority over the nations.
Including the terrifying Assyrian war machine. God owns it all. Furthermore, the text describes the Lord as Yoshev, which translates to sitting.
Sitting. That feels like a very calm posture.
It is. In Hebrew grammar, this is an active participle denoting continuous, uninterrupted action.
That is a stark contrast to what is happening on earth. While the earthly kings and politicians are frantically pacing the floors, sweating over the Assyrian threat, and holding emergency meetings, the heavenly king is continuously seated.
He is unbothered. He is seated in complete, uninterrupted sovereignty.
Wow.
The text describes his throne as high and lifted up, transcending all human geopolitical structures and military alliances.
But the detail that truly ruins the prophet is the description of the Lord's garments, right?
Yes. The text notes that the train of his robe, the shulav, completely fills the massive temple, the hikal.
Okay, I have a logistical question about that specific detail. Why does the physical volume of the space matter so much here?
It is highly symbolic, but also visually overwhelming.
Because I imagine the oxygen being sucked out of a room by a massive fire, leaving no room to breathe. Does the robe filling every single corner signify that there is absolutely zero room left for human ego or pride?
That is the specific implication derived from the syntax. In the ancient Near Eastern world, the length of a monarch's train was a direct visual representation of his glory, his wealth, and his authority.
So a longer robe meant a more mighty king.
Yes, and the trailing edges of God's garment are so vast, they displace everything else in the room. There is no corner where Isaiah can stand and boast in his prophetic pedigree.
There is no space for Uzziah's pride either.
None. Human pride is completely displaced by the overwhelming volume of divine majesty.
So you have this seated, unbothered king, and his robe takes up all the oxygen in the room. But surrounding him are beings that amplify the terror of the scene even further.
We're introduced to the seraphim.
Right, the angelic beings.
The Hebrew root of the word suggests burning ones. These are sinless, magnificent heavenly creatures, yet even they veil their faces and their feet in the presence of the king.
They have 6 wings, right?
Yes, and they use 4 of them just to cover themselves in an act of staggering humility before the Holy One.
And they're crying out to one another, "Holy, holy, holy."
That threefold repetition is crucial to understand. In Hebrew, repetition is used for emphasis, like bolding or highlighting a word.
So saying it 3 times takes it to the absolute maximum.
Yes, to say it 3 times signifies total separateness, unapproachable purity, and infinite majesty. Holiness is the radiance of all God, is in his absolute separateness from creation and from sin.
And the physical reaction to their voices is insane. The text notes that the foundations of the threshold shake, and smoke fills the house simply at the sound of their voices.
It is a violent shaking.
It is wild to think about that physical reaction. The massive stone foundations of the building are quaking just from the sound of praise. It seems like creation itself is more responsive to God's holiness than sinful humans are.
That is a brilliant observation.
How do you cultivate that kind of reverence today? Because it feels like we treat God very casually, like he is just a life coach waiting to help us achieve our goals.
The commentaries point out that modern religion frequently domesticates God. We treat him like a casual friend or a localized deity who exists to endorse our personal projects and make our lives smoother.
Yeah, we approach him with a buddy-buddy attitude, assuming he is lucky to have us on his team.
But this passage demands holy terror. It completely annihilates any man-centered theology. When you see God as he truly is, it produces absolute reverence, not casualness.
Confronted by this blazing purity, the prophet's immediate reaction is one of utter devastation. He just falls apart completely.
He collapses under the weight of the vision. He cries, "Woe is me, for I am lost."
And that word lost, what does it literally mean in the Hebrew?
That specific word translated as lost or undone means ruined, brought to absolute silence, or literally coming apart at the seams.
Coming apart at the seams. Wow.
True sight of God destroys all self-flattery. Isaiah confesses that he is a man of unclean lips, and that he dwells among a people of unclean lips.
It is interesting that he specifically targets his lips. He is a prophet. His mouth is his specific instrument of vocation, like he speaks for a living.
Right.
And he realizes the very tool he uses for his calling is completely defiled.
The very instrument of his ministry is contaminated by sin. The mouth reveals the heart, as Jesus teaches later in the Gospels.
So Isaiah requires purification.
He cannot pronounce holy words with an unholy mouth. And this is where the narrative shifts from severe exposure to gracious provision.
Okay, tell us about the provision.
One of the seraphim flies to Isaiah with a live coal taken from the altar with tongs.
But how does a physical piece of burning coal take away spiritual guilt? I always think of this moment like a spiritual cauterization.
That is a very visceral image.
Yeah, it is an incredibly painful procedure, pressing a live coal to your face, but it is entirely saving because it burns away the infection.
Let us examine the mechanics of how this works structurally. The altar mentioned in the vision points directly to the brazen altar of sacrifice in the temple courtyard.
Where the animals were offered.
Yes, this is the place where the animal substitute is slaughtered, its blood is shed, and the fire of God's holy wrath consumes the substitute instead of the sinful worshiper.
Okay, so the coal comes from that specific fire.
The coal is the physical carrier of that completed transaction. The seraph touches it to Isaiah's lips and declares that his guilt is taken away and his sin is atoned for.
This is the doctrine of substitutionary atonement in action.
Spot on.
What stands out to me is that grace takes the absolute initiative here. Isaiah contributes nothing to the cleansing process except the sin that makes the cleansing necessary.
He is completely passive in the reception of grace.
Right. He does not cleanse himself. He does not climb up to the altar to grab the coal.
The verbs in the Hebrew text emphasize divine action and completed provision. God's remedy comes down to meet Isaiah's specific confession. The coal addresses his exact wound.
And only after this complete ruin and subsequent purification does the Lord finally speak the commission.
The order of events is vital. We cannot mix this up.
God speaks the commission after the cleansing. The Lord says, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?"
And Isaiah, who is now cleansed and forgiven, immediately volunteers, "Here am I, send me."
So the sequence cannot be reversed. God is seen before man speaks. Sin is confessed before service begins.
Yes. Atonement is provided before the commission is accepted.
Because a theology that starts with human ambition but neglects divine glory becomes dangerous, exhausting activism.
You'll burn out quickly if your ministry is fueled by your own zeal rather than a response to completed atonement.
But here is a massive theological twist that completely changes how we read this text. We have this terrifying scene in the Old Testament, but the expert commentaries bring in a huge revelation from the New Testament.
Specifically from the Gospel of John, chapter 12.
Right.
This is a breathtaking connection that ties the entire biblical narrative together. The Apostle John, reflecting on the unbelief of the people during Jesus' earthly ministry, quotes this exact passage from Isaiah 6.
And then John makes a staggering claim.
He writes, Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and spoke of him. The him John is referring to is Jesus.
Wow.
This event in Isaiah 6 was a Christophany. Isaiah saw the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ sitting on the throne of the universe.
Wait, let me make sure I'm grasping this. The terrifying king, the Lord of armies whose robe fills the temple, the one who causes the massive stone doors to shake with his presence, that is Jesus.
Yes, it is. The Jesus who later walked the dusty roads of Galilee in humility, the Jesus who washed his disciples' feet, is the very same divine Lord whose glory fills heaven and earth.
That is just incredible to consider.
He shares the exact same attributes of holiness, sovereignty, and glory as God the Father. This demands a robust Christology.
So Jesus is the ultimate sent one, stepping into a hostile, rebellious world to provide the actual atonement that was only pictured by that burning coal.
He provides the true cleansing.
How does realizing that the king on the throne is actually Jesus rewrite our reading of the Old Testament?
Right.
And for that matter, how does it change our understanding of the Great Commission when Jesus tells his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations?
Well, it changes everything about our approach. It means the mission of the church is not just a humanitarian social project to make the world slightly better.
Right. It is not just charity work.
It is the global declaration of the absolute supremacy of Jesus Christ. He is the reigning king right now. Furthermore, the physical temple in Jerusalem gives way to the church,
A spiritual house made of living stones.
which are the believers. Christ fulfills the ancient temple imagery completely. In him, God dwells among his people permanently.
So if Christ is that exalted king, our response to his commission must manifest in our daily practical labor. We cannot just say we want to work for the king and then sit on our hands waiting for a dramatic feeling.
This brings us to the most practical, grinding application of the text.
Okay, let us get into the practical application.
You cannot be sent across the globe if you are not currently laboring faithfully at home. The local covenant community, meaning your local church congregation, is the mandatory proving ground for any ministry.
So you cannot skip the local church.
No. The modern Lone Ranger mentality, where someone claims a massive calling from God but refuses to submit to the accountability of a local congregation, is completely unbiblical.
It goes right back to the basic training analogy we discussed earlier. Preparation happens in mundane, unglamorous labor.
The quiet, unseen work.
We are talking about the sweaty, annoying realities of teaching toddlers in Sunday school, setting up metal folding chairs, or visiting the sick in a sterile hospital room.
We must embrace the theology of the mundane. God refines our character and exposes our hidden pride through those seemingly insignificant tasks.
So if you are unwilling to wash the feet of the saints in your local congregation, you have no business booking a flight to the nations.
The sources bring up an incredible piece of advice from Charles Spurgeon, a prominent preacher from the 1800s.
Oh, I love Spurgeon. What did he say?
He was advising a young man who wanted to be a missionary. Spurgeon urged the young man to focus intensely on reading the scriptures and engaging in prevailing prayer.
The ordinary means of grace?
Yes, he explicitly warned against relying on pragmatic business models or demographic strategies to force a ministry to happen.
Because God leaves those best who are with him most.
Precisely. Preparation requires total dedication to those ordinary means of grace we defined earlier. A calling is solidified through the grueling daily discipline of personal Bible study and agonizing prayer, not through brilliant marketing campaigns.
I have to ask a question that I know a lot of people use as an internal excuse when they want to avoid local service.
Okay, what is the excuse?
What if you feel your specific local congregation is too small? What if it lacks formal programs, a slick worship band, or a dedicated missions board?
People say that all the time.
Does that justify waiting on the sidelines for a more glamorous, well-funded opportunity to come along?
That specific excuse reeks of unmortified pride.
Wow. Tell us how you really feel.
Well, it is true. If you want to labor badly enough, you will find a place to minister in your local church, regardless of its size or budget. You stop waiting for a high-profile opportunity and start utilizing the small opportunities right in front of you.
Because the barriers overseas are going to be way worse.
Exponentially greater. The barriers and difficulties you will face in cross-cultural ministry are massive compared to the petty annoyances at home. If you cannot handle the mundane tasks and the difficult personalities in a small congregation now, you will be absolutely crushed later when the stakes are higher.
So it all comes down to your current posture before God. Let us summarize the main arguments we have hit today.
Sounds good.
Discerning a call is not a matter of geography or seeking a thrill. It is not about feeling a mystical shiver down your spine or waiting for an owl to drop a letter down your chimney.
It is about your posture before a sovereign God.
You must be ruined by his holiness, cleansed by his atoning grace, and faithfully laboring in the obscure, ordinary tasks within your local church.
The consistent burden of the biblical text is clear. God sends cleansed worshipers.
He does not send those who are impressed with themselves or their own skills.
No, he does not. If the Lord keeps you at home, you labor there for his glory. If he sends you across the world, you go for his glory.
The right place is wherever the Holy King has you, provided your heart is bowed before him and your hope is fixed securely on Christ's atonement.
That is the core message of the text.
So what does this all mean for us as we wrap up our time together? We have talked about the terrifying holiness of God, the necessary ruin of the prophet, and the beauty of substitutionary atonement.
I want to leave you with a massive realization derived from the seraphim's cry in verse 3.
Okay, lay it on us.
They declared that the whole earth is already full of his glory. Not just the physical temple in Jerusalem, the entire earth.
Wow.
Therefore, taking the gospel across oceans is not an attempt to drag a localized deity to a dark place. It is the act of opening the eyes of the nations to an exalted king who already claims total dominion over their land.
Think about how that changes the way you view the unreached world, or even just your secular workplace. You are not bringing God to a new place as if he is absent. You are announcing the king who already owns it.
Precisely. You do not wait for dramatic sign while neglecting plain obedience. You place yourself where Isaiah was placed, before the throne, beneath the word, honest about sin, dependent upon atonement, and ready to obey.
It turns out we do not need to wait by the chimney for a magical letter. We just need to report for duty to the king whose robe already fills the temple. Thanks for diving deep with us today.